block, try moving cars up a few blocks that way. By the time I came back here to get dry clothes out of the house, the water was probably up to here. It was like a tidal wave. Boom, in.
Michael Clark's parents, Linda and Bob, live just around the corner. They don't want to abandon their home.
We have 2 dogs and a cat. And he said, oh, and chickens. He had 2 chickens, which I think he's worried about more than anything. But
doing the backstroke.
He said, oh, I think we'll stay. I think we'll stay.
By the time Linda finally decides to drive out on her own, it's too late.
I put the key in the ignition and I looked up and I saw a wave of water coming around Cedar Grove Avenue. And I said, oh my God. And I went to get out of the car because I realized it wasn't going to start. And the wave hit the car and I had to push my way out of the car because the water was coming against the door. And I tried to make it to the back of the house and the water was pushing me away. I was screaming. Bob came running out and he pulled me up. He helped me get up the stairs. He pulled me out of the water. And we ran for the bedroom because he said, we have to get in the attic. We have to get in the attic.
Linda and Bob are not the only residents fearing for their lives. 911 calls from Staten Island are flooding the fire department's switchboard.
Just dealing alone with Staten Island would have been enough for the department without anything else going on. So that was another point of concern for me, in that Staten Island was really, really being wiped out. I live on Staten Island, so my family was there.
But on higher ground, in parts of Brooklyn, Sandy feels like a bad storm, not a catastrophic killer.
I was listening to the news and hearing about what was coming to the areas on the shore and realizing this seemed like it was going to be a substantial storm. But I didn't have any real concerns for our safety or comfort in where we were in Brooklyn.
When Jacob Vogelman receives a call for help from a friend, he tells his mother he's going to brave the strong winds and rain.
When Jake said he was going out, and I knew, they kept saying, the peak of the storm will be in 40 minutes. I said, Jake, I don't think this is a really good time to be going out. And he said, well, Jesse needs me to come over. And that was it. I mean, Jesse needed him, and he went.
The storm is reaching its peak. Close to 8 p.m. on October 29th, the eye of the storm hits Atlantic City, New Jersey, bringing wind speeds of more than 80 miles an hour and waves higher than 40 feet.
Once the eye makes its way onto land, that's the most intense part of the system. The eye wall is where all that energy and wind energy is at. Atlantic City suffered extreme damage, severe storm surge, and monstrous flooding. And they also recorded the lowest pressure ever recorded in Atlantic City at 940 millibars.
This is worse than Katrina for us. This is where we never went through anything like this.
30 minutes the water was up 4 feet, and just watching it come up each step.
Unprecedented in my 20-year career in leadership and emergency management in this county.
A wind came through here like I've never seen. It sounded like a train coming. And I had like 10 sliding doors all in a line in the back. They all just exploded from the wind, like a bomb went off. And then minutes later, the whole roof went up in the air. It was like Wizard of Oz. There was 10 feet of water all the way around me. There was just no way for me to go. So after the roof blew off and then all the walls caved in, the floor went down into the basement, I swam to that car there that you see and got inside of it.
Throughout the region, people are finding themselves in life or death situations. In the Rockaways, Shatisha and her 6 children are trapped by floodwaters. She calls 911.
We got a voicemail, and it was saying, you know, everybody call is important, you know, leave a message, but I wasn't leaving no message. This is 911, and I know 911 will pick up their phone. So I was able to get on Twitter. And, you know, I tweeted, and, you know, I was like, you know, a huge shout out to the FDNY.
At the Fire Department Control Center, Emily Rohini runs social media.
I was prepared to be tweeting out safety information, and I started getting a lot of tweets from people who said they did not have phone service, that they would try calling 911 and they'd have them on there for a second and then it would drop. A lot of them still had some connectivity with their phones to something like Twitter, and so that was just their way of reaching out somehow to get to somebody to help them.
Shatisha's desperate tweet appears on Emily's screen.
I remember she and her 6 boys were trapped in their house. Floodwaters were rushing in, and she was really panicked. She didn't want to see her children in danger, and I knew I had to do something to help. So I started calling fire department dispatchers to make sure that they had that information.
At 8:30 p.m., the Hudson River breaches its banks and inundates the West Side Highway in Manhattan. From there, it floods a critical electrical substation. Salt water hits the cables carrying power to 250,000 New Yorkers. The result is cataclysmic.
With that explosion, 10 networks went simultaneously, which basically took out everything from 34th Street down to the Battery. Almost half of this island.
Lower Manhattan goes dark.
You would never think this was happening in New York. So the best way to deal with now is just not panic. People just gotta stay civil.
By now, 3 million people in New York and New Jersey are without power. As bad as conditions are in Lower Manhattan, the situation at Breezy Point is far worse. For a still unknown reason, a house bursts into flame and fire quickly spreads.
The entire sky was just lit up in the reddest, orangest color you could ever imagine. I called my mom, and she was hysterical on the phone. She was like, just say a prayer. It was a very emotional time. I didn't know how I was gonna get out.
Meanwhile, the volunteer firemen are trapped by ever-rising floodwaters in their community center. They can do nothing while their town burns. Parts of New York and New Jersey are now under 14 feet of water, or worse.
Now keep in mind that on top of that storm surge, you also have the wave action. And there were waves 10, 15 feet high in the storm. So there were parts of Manhattan that were being impacted 25 feet above sea level.
By now, the water coursing across Lower Manhattan is pouring into the subway system. MTA Chief Joe Lota is powerless to stop his beloved network from being overwhelmed.
This is worse than my worst fear. The water from the Hudson River was flowing down into the Battery Tunnel. There were white rapids flowing into the tunnel, and it sounded like a waterfall. It ended up the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Each tunnel had 43 million gallons of water, over 6,000 feet, more than a mile, filled with water. Floor to ceiling, side to side, completely filled up all the way.
At the fire department command post, calls for help continue to come in from every direction.
I got a 6-alarm fire in Breezy Point. I got tons of people trapped in the water. I got a fire on City Island. I got people in Gerritsen Beach calling that they're trapped. I got people in Lower Manhattan that have no power.
At 9 p.m., as the peak of the surge finally passes and the waters begin to recede, the Breezy Point firefighters manage to make their way back to their flooded station, where at last they catch a break.
Miraculously, even though these trucks were underwater, they did start up. Once we started driving, the firemen stayed with the trucks, and we started rescuing other people.
I saw the flashlight going back and forth.